I'm Jeremy Wade, explorer, biologist and aquatic detective. I've fought battles with river and marine monsters all over the world, and I've been pushed to the limit time and again. But one extraordinary encounter stands out.
It's in the fast water. Try and relax and keep a bit calm.
On my first ever River Monsters shoot, I landed a rare goonch catfish as big as me.
That is a big fish.
Since then, I've heard little about the goonch. I feared that they were gone for good. But now, from India's neighbour, Nepal,
Do you have any scars?
intriguing stories are surfacing of fishermen dragged into mountain rivers, never to be seen again.
But after that, he's just so terrified of what's in the water. He's now a farmer. Might need the boat.
Is my old adversary, the deadly goonch catfish, back from the brink and back in business?
A decade ago, in my first ever River Monsters investigation, I spent 6 grueling weeks on India's Karnali River trying to unmask the elusive monster behind a series of deadly attacks. I was exhausted and close to giving up when I was propelled into a raging river by an underwater beast. After an epic struggle, I finally caught the culprit. A 161-pound underwater ogre with a taste for human flesh. The giant devil catfish, known as the goonch. Catching this ferocious fish made my reputation and launched River Monsters. Since then, the Karnali River has experienced rapid development and population growth. Parts have become so polluted, they've been declared a health hazard. I feared that big goonch had disappeared from the region's rivers. But now, an unexpected report from the Himalayan country of Nepal. A mysterious incident that feels strangely familiar. A lone fisherman on a mountain river, dragged off his feet and into the water by an unseen creature. His body never recovered. Could this be the work of the goonch? I have to find out. I'm heading 4,500 miles to Asia and the mighty Himalayan mountains. The top of the world is new territory for me. My destination, Nepal, is home to 8 of the world's 10 highest peaks, including the highest of them all, Mount Everest. These mountains are the source of many great rivers. I'm curious to find out what lives in these remote waters. Kathmandu is the spiritual and cultural heart of Nepal, a place of gods, ghosts, and demons. Looking at all these amazing carvings, it's not hard to imagine that this could be a place where you might find some strange monsters.
The first step of my investigation is to meet my source for the recent story, Colonel Mike Allen. Mike spent 40 years as a soldier with the elite Gurkha regiment and many decades fishing the country's rivers. Like me, he has a fascination for the beasts that lurk in them.
One hears reports of huge fish tucked away in some very deep pools.
Mike still keeps his ear to the ground for interesting stories, and he's able to tell me where the mysterious case of the disappearing fisherman took place. On Nepal's longest and wildest river, the Karnali. Getting there won't be easy, so I've enlisted an experienced driver, Mahesh. The journey takes me through the foothills of the Himalayas, where rockfalls and landslides are common.
This road, if you can call it that, is literally scratched into the side of a very unstable mountain. And every monsoon, huge bits of that mountainside slide down and end up in the river.
Mahesh warns me that the devastating earthquake of 2015 made many roads here impassable.
Look at this, boulders the size of a house. So at this stage, I'm not actually sure if I'm going to make it through.
We finally make it to the village of Kino, where the fisherman who disappeared lived. The villagers are aware of the case.
Anybody else here who might know more about it? Thank you. Thank you.
I'm directed to the owner of the local tea house. Nawal was once a fisherman here on the Karnali River. He was friends with the man who disappeared and has agreed to talk about the incident.
Can you tell me exactly what happened to this man just recently? What happened to him?
As I question him about the mysterious case, I can start to see what happened. The incident took place just downstream from the village at a popular fishing spot. Ali, an experienced fisherman, was throwing a cast net from the shallows. His morning had been slow, so he stayed on after the other men had headed home. He was never seen again. According to Nawal, Ali was a strong swimmer and unlikely to have drowned. And if he had, a body would have turned up somewhere downriver. But despite a search that went on for 20 days, no corpse was ever found. The consensus among the villagers is that Ali was dragged in to his death. What creature could have been powerful enough to drag a man into the water and devour his body? A big gunch catfish would have the power, and I know it has a reputation for disposing of the dead. But would it attack a man who's fighting back? I can't just assume a gunch is guilty. I need to consider other big predators that haunt Nepal's rivers. There's one I have in mind. But when I ask around, I don't get the answers I'm expecting.
When you hear about people disappearing in the river in this part of the world, where possibly some large underwater creature is involved, top of the list of suspects is normally crocodiles. The thing is, if you've got crocodiles in the water, you're going to see them from time to time out of the water as well, because they have to come out into the heat to warm themselves up. And the people here just don't see them.
I have a hunch why the locals don't come across crocodiles on this part of the Karnali. Rivers here are either rain or glacier fed, and this affects the water's year-round temperature, and ultimately what lives in it. The cloudy grey colour of the water, the result of sediment known as rock flour, tells me that this is meltwater from the mountains and will remain cold all year. Crocodiles dislike cold water, and since they've not been seen by the locals who've fished this river for centuries, I've scratched crocs from my suspect list. There must be something else, large enough to drag a man into this river. But what is it? I've got more questions for Nawal. And this time, he reveals more. There was another incident on the same stretch of river, and Nawal himself was the victim. I'm in remote western Nepal, on the trail of a river monster reported to have dragged a fisherman to a watery grave.
Was it fairly close to the side of the river, and how deep was the water?
I've just uncovered a second story with intriguing parallels to the first. A few years ago, Nawal was out fishing with a group of friends. They had fished this spot before and knew the waters well. Suddenly, something very large became entangled in Nawal's net. He tried to hang on, but was being dragged away downstream. Even with the help of his friends, Nawal was unable to control whatever was in his net.
He was pulled, he told me, about 100 yards downstream, and it was only because these other guys stopped what they were doing and came to assist him that he survived.
The original victim, Ali, didn't have people around to help him. But why didn't he simply let go of the net? Nawal tells me that fishermen loop the cord to the net around their wrist, so they don't lose it. This isn't normally dangerous. But if something really big gets in the net, the cord becomes a deadly noose. Nawal believes that this is what happened to Ali.
And one extra little detail, Nawal himself, he doesn't fish anymore. He said after that he's just so terrified of what is in the water. He's now a farmer, doesn't go near the water.
Both these stories remind me of my own experience 10 years ago in India. I too was overpowered, forced into a river, and could have drowned. But I can't blame a gunch without proof. There could be other suspects here on the Karnali. It's a major river and flows all the way from the high Himalayas to the mighty Ganges. It contains many species, and no doubt some surprises under the surface.
No, that's not working.
But things are bumpy from the start.
This is the second cast. 2 casts, 1 snag. It's just the nature of this kind of fishing. You've got to be philosophical about it. You've got to have plenty of spare gear as well.
After hours of trying, my frustrations begin to mount.
Slightly revising my opinion of this place. I haven't got that gut feeling. I haven't got that sense of anticipation of something could happen at any moment.
I switch up my gear just to try and get something on the line.
Yeah. Yes. Stuck on something. It's not snagged, that's not moving. It's a line or a net.
I've lost my lure on something in the river.
Yeah, that's the line gone. That would have been at the knot to my swivel.
This is a bad sign. I'm hoping the fisherman can tell me what's preventing me from getting to the fish.
Here, big fish now?
Big fish. 15 kg.
15 kg.
30 kg.
It quickly becomes clear that there are 2 problems here.
So now a lot of people are fishing this river.
Yeah.
The river is overfished, and the equipment being used is left hidden in the water for days and sometimes even discarded there.
So it's probably something like that I got caught up on. Mostly this is going to be under the surface. I'm going to discover one of these when I hook up on it. A single rod and line in this place. I'm just not going to get anything of note at all.
I need to find a stretch of river that's not riddled with nets and lines waiting to snag my gear. a place where fewer people are fishing. When briefing me on the region, Colonel Mike told me about an area he's fished before.
In the lower part, which is the Babai River.
He said the Babai River is isolated and difficult to access, so this should mean less fishing activity. From a nearby high point, things look promising. Little evidence of habitation. On the river's edge, there are other encouraging signs. These marks were made by suckermouth fish, swimming over the rock and feeding on algae. Here we go. Here's the head of the fish. The sucker is here, and it's just moving along slowly, sucking up algae. And what these marks tell me is three things. First thing is that a couple of months ago, the water level was somewhere up here. Two, there are small fish in this river, and we're talking about something this size that would have made these marks here. And three, normally when you've got small fish, you're going to find something bigger that wants to feed on them. After my frustrations on the Karnali, I'm eager to get a line in these pristine waters. Now I have a real chance of tracking down the monster that's stalking this region's rivers.
Yeah, there's something pulling there. There we go. Yeah. Got a fish.
I am in western Nepal, investigating mysterious incidents where fishermen were dragged into rivers, one to his death. And I finally got a fish on my line.
Look at that. Look at that. This is a marcia. I think the first thing to be said about this is that it's a very pretty fish. These large golden scales, very streamlined body. This is what, back in the days of the British Empire, the colonial gents in their time off used to come and fish for. These potentially grow to over 100 pounds, some stories even maybe 200 pounds. I've caught large marcia myself. I caught one over 90 pounds. So this is certainly a fish that if somebody got it in their throw net, this is absolutely capable of pulling you in the water. Although it doesn't look like it, this is actually a predator. It has a very muscular mouth, which is sort of telescopic. It's quite capacious there. It feeds on the bottom, going over rocks, feeling with these, but that's capable of taking quite large prey. And it does have teeth, but the teeth are not in the normal place. They are throat teeth. They're in the back of the throat. Oh.
A large marcia can be a formidable fish, but I'd need to see how big they grow here to be convinced it's a serious suspect. The Babai River is clearly worth investigating. I'll need a boat to travel downstream. When I explain what I'm looking for and why, I'm directed to a man named Firilal. He has a remarkable story. A couple of years ago, Firilal was walking by the river. It was late in the day and getting dark. He noticed something at the water's edge and went to investigate. He couldn't see what the creature was, but it was large and semi-submerged. Firilal thought it was dead. It wasn't. He had to tear himself free.
So it's here. Do you have any scar, any mark?
The scars extend from his shoulder to his wrist. This animal was big. When I ask him what he thought it was, he uses a word in his local dialect that I'm guessing means crocodile. But this doesn't add up.
If that had been a crocodile, either you don't get your arm back, or you're not around to tell the story, or you've got great big holes in your arm. And I've seen crocodile bites. That's not a crocodile bite. That's something else. I really need to find out what exactly that was.
Could this same monster be responsible for the incidents on the Karnali River? Firalal's terrifying encounter happened downstream, inside a national park where no one is allowed to live. I need permission to go there. At the park office, the ranger warns me about potential dangers on the Babai River.
So the water was all the way up to the bridge, to the road?
Just 2 years ago, there was a massive flood. Few people have ventured here since. To help me navigate safely downstream, I'm assigned 2 guides, Gandhi and Katak. They explain that the river has narrow sections of fast water, punctuated by wider, slow-flowing pools, which will be best for fishing.
I think this could be a good position to fish from.
Right there?
Yeah, I think I'll try here.
The river takes us through alluvial grasslands and thick subtropical forest. My guides warn me there are rhinos and tigers here, so I'll have to watch my back as we continue downriver.
Push kara.
For Gandhi and Katak, every trip down the Babai is a new challenge because the river's course is constantly changing.
This is just the fact that the river floods every year, and every year it'll subtly rearrange the river, but sometimes it'll rearrange it in quite a dramatic way.
The recent massive flood may also have changed the underwater geography of the river and displaced some of the fish, which could make tracking down suspects a tougher task.
Oh yeah, all right.
Throw it and we'll tie it on the ring.
I'm eager to get down to the scene of Firalal's attack, but my guides advise that we stop and make camp. It's a good thing we did.
That's pretty definitely an elephant crossing place there, just at the bottom of this pool. And they come out 75 yards away from our camp, so good job we didn't put the camp a little bit further down. They might have got a bit upset, and you don't want to upset these guys.
Wild elephants could tear apart our camp if they stumbled on it in the dark. My guides tell me that every year in lowland Nepal, people are killed by elephant herds. The next morning, I'm itching to get on and get fishing.
What about this, though?
Crocodile tracks. They indicate the water must be warmer here on the Babai than on the Karnali, so crocs have to be on the suspect list for any attack here. But Firalal's scars were like no crocodile bites I've ever seen. They were made by a narrower-jawed monster. More like an alligator gar, maybe. A fish I know well.
Actually laying hands on this prehistoric beast.
But gar are not native to these waters. There's got to be something else out here. We continue downstream to the area where Firilal was attacked.
Yeah, let's try one from just here.
With tigers and crocs on the banks, I'm staying in the boat. I'm not sure what attacked Firalau, but it's in here somewhere.
Oh, there we go. Yep. Whoa.
I'm in remote western Nepal, investigating 3 mysterious cases. And I've got a fish on.
There it is. I have no landing net or anything, so that might impede me just a little bit. There. That is a snakehead. I've seen snakehead in the Indian subcontinent. Normally just a few inches long. I've used them for bait. But this thing, this has got to be, I don't know, around about the £10 mark, something like that. But I have it on good authority that these grow considerably bigger. A reliable estimate of £90. And if you got one of those in a throw net, particularly when one of these is fresh, full of energy, that could well pull you in. I wouldn't want to be in that position myself.
A big snakehead could have been responsible for the dragging incidents on the Karnali. But what about the attack on Firalau here on the Babai?
It's one of the very few fish that will actually go for a person, knowing that it's a person. You know, it's not poor visibility, mistaken identity, reflex grab, anything like that. This is one fish that really does punch above its weight. Putting on a bite-proof glove here, I'm going to try and have a look at the teeth. A lot of predatory fish swallow their prey whole. Some predatory fish, such as piranhas, bite lumps out, and you can look at their teeth and you can tell that that's what they do. This, it's a bit misleading. They don't look like cutting teeth. They look like gripping teeth. They're like needles. But in fact, what they do is when they grip their prey, if they shake the head, those teeth act rather like the teeth on a saw blade, and they can actually cut a small fish in half in a fraction of a second. It looks like this has been injured by something. On the other side as well, it looks like something's had a go at it.
Anything that attacks a 3-foot snakehead is going to be a serious predator. And the tooth marks again suggest a narrow-jawed assailant. Whatever bit into this snakehead may be what attacked Firalau. Half an hour downstream, I spot something way up ahead at the water's edge and decide to investigate.
It's a long, dark shape. It's hard to make out at this distance, though.
The creature emerges. But it's not a croc. The knob on its long, thin jaw is unmistakable. I can hardly believe what I'm seeing. This is a gharial, possibly the rarest river monster of them all.
This is one of the scarcest predators in the world. There's barely more than 200 of them left, and I am now close enough to get a real appreciation of the size of the animal. It's at least 15 feet, but also I can start to see those jaws, the jaws and the teeth. And I'll tell you, although scientists say these are specifically designed for catching and eating fish, when you're this close to one, the adrenaline is definitely pumping.
For me, it's the encounter of a lifetime. Because of hunting and habitat loss, the gharial is critically endangered in the wild and is now protected. I have no doubt that this was the narrow-jawed animal that scarred the snakehead. But is the gharial responsible for the attacks I'm investigating? it's time to take stock. Well, the suspect list I've managed to assemble so far contains some pretty impressive beasts, but somehow I don't think there's a particularly compelling case for any one of them. The marcia can grow big, but I've not seen large enough ones here. The snakehead can do some real damage, but I don't think it's aggressive enough to actually kill someone. And the gharial. It's certainly big enough and has the power and weaponry to be seriously dangerous. And with a jaw much narrower than a croc's, I'm pretty certain this is the creature that scarred Futility. But what about the incidents on the Karnali River? In this case, water temperature is key. Since it's too cold for crocodiles on the Karnali, I don't think gharial would be there either. I've been trying to keep an open mind, but every sign points to the beast that drew me here in the first place. Possibly, of all the monsters I've tangled with in my career, the most memorable, the goonch catfish. The goonch ripped me from a riverbank in just the same way that narwhal was overpowered. And its taste for human flesh could account for Ali's body never being recovered. The goonch has the means and the motive, and I know this fish is capable of the crime. It's now my prime suspect.
Might need the boat.
Time for a showdown with the original river monster. I'm in western Nepal investigating 3 mysterious cases. I believe I've solved one, but 2 incidents in which the victims were dragged into rivers, one to his death, remain open. After fishing 2 rivers extensively, I've narrowed my focus to the goonch catfish. A decade ago, it took me 6 tortuous weeks to track down a big goonch. And such beasts are now even rarer. I think I need to give this a closer look. My journal from the original expedition details the depths, water flow and river conditions that led to a successful catch. I'm hoping this hard-won knowledge will help fast-track me to the fish. Going after goonch requires patience, persistence, and preparation.
It's not exactly fresh, but the good thing about catfish such as goonch is going to help them locate it, and they're not fussy really in terms of the freshness of the stuff that they eat.
With any luck, the pungent bait will prove irresistible to the sometimes fickle goonch.
A lot of people think you've got to hide the hook. You hide the hook, you're not going to get that hook to penetrate in the mouth of the predator. So the hook points have to be visible. And what I've done to hold it all, particularly holding the mouth shut, if that mouth is open, the current's going to pull the whole thing apart. So I've used bits of luggage tag, and that's holding everything nicely together.
Now, to scope out this pool.
What I'm going to do before starting fishing, I just want to get an idea of depths. So just a bit of lead on a bit of light line. I'm just going to drop it off the side of the boat. What I'm looking for is deep water. I mean, what the goonch like is when the current pushes into a rock and then excavates a bit of a hole. But sometimes what looks deep isn't. You cast out and you're just in a few feet of water. Actually, I'll even do it here. It's 3 foot, 6, 9. It's 12 foot. This is 12 foot of water. This could be a good spot here. This could be a good spot.
Goonch use their whisker-like barbels to check out potential food, so a bite may not be the first thing I'll feel on my line.
goonch, very often what they do is they investigate beforehand, and you feel this sort of a bit of a jarring. It's almost a sort of metallic sensation. It's very hard to describe. You feel a bit of a rattling on the line.
Fishing like this requires complete concentration, and experience counts.
I think this is possibly my favourite form of fishing. One rod, and you feel the line, and it's amazing what information you can pick up. Every time I cast, I'm helping to build this mental picture. Oh, that is something. That is something. That was definitely. It's a little boom, boom.
The tantalizing tap on my line is followed by hours with no further sign. But I know that the elusive goonch is rarely caught in a day. For the next week, I fish every hour I can.
Maybe first in here.
Goonch are easily spooked and slow to shed their suspicions. So once I've fished a pool, we leave it and head further downstream.
Much clearer sky today.
It will only be a matter of days before we leave the park and run out of unspoiled river. After a week of frustration, I've caught nothing.
Actually, the water conditions couldn't have been better. Some really, really classic goonch spots. Okay, they can just sit and not feed for a long period of time, but it just is so odd that I spent so much time without even a touch from a fish. It feels like there's hardly anything here.
The recent big flood may have washed many fish out of this area. And although I've seen a fish-eating gharial, it's only the one. I'm really starting to wonder if there are any goonch left in this river. My failure so far is making me question my approach. And inevitably, I'm starting to compare this experience with my first goonch expedition 10 years ago.
The time that has passed since I last fished for goonch, have I changed in that time? Am I a better fisherman? I don't know. Is my ability to see below the surface better? It was one of the Greek philosophers who said, you never step into the same river twice. I could modify that slightly. You never cast into the same river twice, because it is not the same river and you are not the same person.
But one thing is the same, my determination to catch my quarry. I'm going to fish round the clock. Gharial hunt during the day. Maybe the goonch will be more confident to feed after dark.
Somewhere down there is the fish I'm after. I'm just trying to imagine what it's doing right now at this moment. The chances are it's picked up the scent of this bait. Maybe it's just moments away from taking, I don't know. It could be very close to the bait. Oh, yeah. It's coming in. There's something there. I'm going to swing it up here. Ah, it's a turtle. But I've got to be a bit careful of this thing.
It's not what I was hoping for, but this turtle isn't a complete disappointment.
When I caught that big goonch from the same pool, I had one of these fellas. This one's probably about 7 or 8 pounds. I had one of these about 200 pounds.
A turtle could be a good omen, and it better be. Tomorrow will be our final day in the national park. My last chance to catch a goonch. My guides say there are just 2 fishing pools left before the river returns us to civilization. I plan to fish this one through the morning and move to the second this evening. But I hadn't bargained on company.
These are tiger prints coming along this direction, and this is a big animal. And the other thing is, this is very fresh, probably this morning, probably a matter of just hours. So, and with this long grass here, you know, it might not be that far away even now.
With a potential man-eater on the prowl, it's maybe not a great idea to fish here. So we're moving downstream to the final pool.
I want to fish from that rock.
I have one last opportunity for a showdown with the goonch. A high casting position could help prevent my line wrapping round any large underwater boulders. The hours tick by. It's looking like another day of promise, followed by disappointment.
Oh, there we go.
A distinct tap on my line. I've hooked something,
Oh, come here.
but I'm struggling to control it.
This feels a bit different. Might need the boat.
I'm on the Babai River in Nepal. There's something on my line, and I need to react fast.
Might need the boat.
The fish is still on, but I'm in danger of losing it.
Okay, got it. Let's go out.
In the confusion, the fish has taken the advantage and found a snag.
The line is around a rock. Damn. It's gone. It's gone. Oh, no. I had it hooked, and yet somehow it snagged. The position of a rock in the wrong place.
I've been here before.
It's in the fast water.
An ominous tap on my line. A big fish forcing me into the water. And with me out of my element, everything in the balance. That time, victory. This time, defeat. I've reached the end of this investigation. My experience just now makes me think a gunch was responsible for what happened to Narwhal and Ali. Of course, I'm disappointed not to catch my culprit, But perhaps this is the right ending for the story of my greatest adversary.
After 9 years of catching all manner of river monsters all around the world, perhaps it's appropriate that it was finally the goonch that reminded me of my fallibility as an angler. And of course, in the broader context, this is a draw. It's 1-1. I'm sort of happy to call this quits. And in fact, not always am I actually fishing for the fish. I'm fishing for the answer, and I did find the answer.
I came here looking for a culprit that I feared was gone for good. I go home with some satisfaction at least. It seems that the giant outlandish gunch, the original river monster, is still out there. I'm Jeremy Wade, and I hope you enjoyed watching Return of the Killer Catfish. Right now, I'm the one on the hook with a bunch of questions from River Monsters viewers. I'll answer as many as I can in the few minutes that we've got. Okay, first up is Liam Rocha on Instagram. Hey Jeremy, my question is, what was the first fish you ever caught in your life? I was about 8 years old. I was on this bridge, this sort of wooden bridge over the river, and I dangled my line down into the space between the weeds on either side of the river, and I caught an 8-inch long roach, which is a silvery thing. There we go, about like that. I'm not sure that you have roach over here, but it's a small silverfish. Savannah K on Facebook. Do your cameramen ever get to fish with you, and if so, what were some of their favourite experiences or catches? We don't have a lot of leisure time on the shoots, but some of the crew do like to fish, and they actually get sort of somewhat jealous of sort of watching me fish all the time. Blovem, is that how you pronounce that? On Instagram. What did you eat for breakfast? I tend to eat, okay, I come from Europe, so I don't go for these huge American breakfasts, you know, sort of plate piled high with stuff. I tend to have something very healthy. I'll have something like a muesli or cereal with rice milk on it, and maybe just a fruit juice and a fruit tea. It's a bit of a hippie breakfast, really, isn't it? You know, I'm a bit of an old hippie after all. Jennifer H on Facebook. Out of all the river monsters you have caught, how many would you like to have had taxidermied and put on your wall if you could have? The answer is 0. Those fish all belong back in the water. You know, I've got the video record of it. There is this technology now, whereas if you take a still photograph, you can get that translated into a fiberglass model you can hang on the wall. But I don't have any of those. Jaya Krishnan J on Facebook. How many push-ups you do every day? Well, it's normally 0. I mean, the number, I can do like 50 in a row if I put my mind to it. I should do more. I've got a bad back. I tend to sort of, I do tend to do stretches and things, sort of yoga type stuff. We're back to that hippie territory again. Charles S on Facebook. After all your worldly travels, I'm sure you've eaten all different kinds of food. My question is, what's the weirdest or strangest food you've ever eaten? I've eaten quite a few insects, insect larvae. So here we go. Oh, it's still moving. It's a little bit disconcerting. Anyway, there it goes. Crispy and crunchy. Can you hear that? And ascalate. That is sort of bacon, roasted, sort of grilled bacon taste to it. I had some actually rather nice palm grubs in Guyana, about that kind of length, living in these like coconut things, and they actually taste quite coconutty. David S. Facebook. What have you learned from filming this series over the past years? Do you know what? One thing that I originally didn't like about the filming process, or I regarded it as a limitation. My fishing time is actually very limited. We have a very short time to catch the fish. When I used to travel on my own, time was more not such an issue. But actually, having limited time makes you fish better. So sometimes with time, and this goes for all sorts of things, less is more. Unfortunately, in this particular case, it's not true because we've run out of time. But thank you very much for watching this and for watching River Monsters. Fish on.